Tonight, all COVID-19 patients have now fully recovered and St. Lucia has no active cases. A Cedar Heights family mourns the loss of a 23-year-old killed in a motorcycle accident. And ferry operators threaten protest action. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Wednesday, the 12th of August, 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News on Flow Channel 117, Kiss FM, the Caribbean Hot FM mobile app, and our Caribbean Hot 7 TV Facebook page. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. There was alarm and concern that St. Lucia's impeccable COVID-19 recovery rate may have been dealt a blow after news that an 86-year-old man with underlying health conditions tested positive for COVID-19 and was even in the intensive care unit. But on Wednesday, the Ministry of Health announced stunning news that all of the island's COVID-19 patients have fully recovered. This is no small feat as countries around the world continue to struggle with getting a hold of this pandemic, and most have recorded deaths. National epidemiologist Dr. Michelle Fassois provided the latest update.
St. Lucia has recorded a total of 25 COVID-19 cases to date. The last 3 patients in care have now fully recovered, tested negative for COVID-19. This now gives the country a 100% recovery rate, and we have recorded 0 COVID-19 related deaths. As of now, there are no reported active COVID-19 cases.
The public is advised that all protocols are still in place, including the reduced numbers for public transportation and hygiene protocols for private sector establishments. These also include the use of a face mask in public, the sanitizing of hands, and maintaining the recommended 6 feet physical distance from others. The Ministry of Health reiterated the importance of maintaining the quarantine of returning nationals and visitors, as it is a great measure in minimizing the risk of transmitting COVID-19.
We again appeal to people who have been placed in quarantine to adhere to the 14-day quarantine period. Where home quarantine has been granted, the individuals must remain there for the full period of time. This action is expected to protect the health and safety of every individual within our country.
Health officials are urging everyone to continue supporting the national effort to minimize the threat of COVID-19 on the island. A Cedar Heights family has been plunged into mourning following the death of a vibrant young man. 23-year-old Andy Jabatis, also known as Taco, is dead following an accident in Vieux Fort. According to eyewitness accounts, the young rider veered off his side in an attempt to avoid a collision with a vehicle that was coming out of the True Value hardware store. Unfortunately, he slammed into a minibus that was traveling in the opposite direction. The accident happened at about 3:28 p.m. on Tuesday. Leading firefighter Stacy Joseph has the details of the response.
On Tuesday, August 11th, at approximately 3:30 p.m., the fire service received a call informing of a motor vehicular incident on the Vieux Fort Labrie Highway. Initial information received stated that a minibus struck a pedestrian. The Vieux Fort and Crash fire stations responded with 2 fire and rescue trucks and 3 ambulances and discovered on the scene that it was a vehicular collision between a motorcycle and a minibus. The responding officers found 10 persons on the scene who were involved in the collision. 9 of the individuals who were the occupants of the minibus, including the driver, complained of pain to their legs with some sustaining facial trauma. The rider of the motorcycle, who was found unconscious on the ground, was immobilized on a spine board and transferred to the ambulance. A rapid assessment of the individual revealed that he sustained a fractured leg and abrasions and some trauma to his body. All patients were provided rapid emergency transportation to the St. Jude Hospital, where they were left in the care of medical personnel.
That was firefighter Stacy Joseph. Now, another member of the St. Lucia Fire Service is making an appeal to motorcyclists to not only practice more caution on the nation's roads, but to use the required protective gear for their own good. Assistant Divisional Officer Jermaine William is stressing the importance of riders taking the laws seriously, as it is a matter of life or death. Genevieve Gonzague reports.
Over the past week, there have been 3 motorcycle accidents. The latest resulted in the death of 23-year-old Andy Jean-Baptiste of Vieux Fort. The Assistant Divisional Officer of the St. Lucia Fire Service, Jermaine William, is appealing to riders and all motorists to adhere to road rules.
Motorists need to accept responsibility for their personal safety. All right, it is important that you do that. I mean, a lot of those crashes are through pure carelessness, pure and simple carelessness.
Williams says, apart from the devastating loss of life, all accidents, whether fatal or minor, put a strain on the resources of the fire service and says, therefore, it is imperative that riders suit up.
With any profession, with any trade, with any sport, with any discipline, basically, persons must wear the appropriate clothing, the appropriate gear. As firefighters, we do not go to fires without our firefighting gear. And we expect the same for persons who traverse our roads with their motorcycles. The first thing I would like to say is that it protects you. Okay? It limits the injuries that you may eventually sustain if you were to be involved in a crash. Your likelihood of survival is greater. It's been proven, it's been tested. Secondly, it's against the law to ride without the necessary headgear or helmet, so to speak.
To address the risks of motorcycling before and after a fall, motorcyclists use personal protective equipment, PPE, or more commonly, motorcycle gear. These help improve visibility with bright colors and retroreflective strips. Motorcycle gear also provides abrasion resistance and impact protection in a crash. Another important aspect of PPE is protection from the elements. Extreme weather can make a long ride unbearable and dangerous. Statistics show that wearing a helmet reduces the rider's risks of death by 37% compared to riding without it. A full-face helmet provides the most protection. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
Meanwhile, a call is being made for a tougher approach to be taken towards motorcyclists who flout the laws of the road, with the island recording a rise in road fatalities involving mainly motorcyclists. The fire service says stronger penalties are the only way to get results. Rochelle Gonzalez reports.
St. Lucia to date has had 25 cases of COVID-19 and no deaths. The St. Lucian authorities placed a number of measures to ensure the safety of the nation during the peak of the pandemic on island. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force is tasked with ensuring that now that the country's borders are reopened, people do not enter illegally or openly flout the rules that have been implemented to safeguard the population. Acting Police Commissioner Milton Daisy on Tuesday stated that 2 individuals have been arrested and taken into quarantine and warns that violators will face the consequences of being non-compliant to protocols.
This last week, 2 persons were arrested for that. They were taken into quarantine because they come in, we do not know, so we had to ensure that they go through the process and then we would do the charging. The police is not, we more believe in assisting persons and so on, but however, when persons have broken the law, they need to be arrested. For COVID, we wouldn't like to arrest somebody for not wearing a mask, but the persons need to be responsible and they should know that there are consequences for not doing certain things, and that person should just do it.
He expressed that the police force experienced many challenges when trying to enforce the laws that were passed for the safety of the nation. He says both physical and human resources were stretched.
Both the physical resources and the human resources. And with physical resources, I must thank the various ministries who loaned us their vehicle during the curfew period, because that assisted us a great deal in patrolling the various areas to ensure that the checkpoints were maintained, to ensure that persons were complying to the various protocols that were in place. Also, with the human resources, what we did was to call in some persons who were on leave, persons who were due to go on leave. Their leave were cancelled. Also, we had persons from the members of the police band who ordinarily would not be doing this type of duty. We took them from their regular band duties and they augmented our teams.
Daisy appealed to members of the public to continue adhering to the COVID-19 health and safety protocols. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzague.
Ferry operators are calling on maritime authorities to justify why local vessels are still not being allowed to operate, while a vessel from a neighboring island has returned to a weekly schedule between St. Lucia and Martinique, carrying both passengers and goods. Captain Ron Torres says that operators are fed up following failed attempts at seeking dialogue with local authorities to discuss the issue. And so he says they are considering protest action. Jacques Wooding reports.
Since the reopening of the yachting sector on July 10, 2020, many questions remain unanswered regarding maritime travel. Owner of Captain Ron Torres, Aaron Alexander, says ferry operators are at wit's end, and their frustrations are further magnified by failed efforts at seeking the intervention of local authorities. He says initially there was a level of understanding, given that across the board no operators had been allowed to resume business. However, this was cut short when a vessel from Martinique was authorized to continue weekly trips to and from the neighboring island. He says authorities have since justified this move by citing the small capacity of the foreign vessel. However, he notes that there are several maritime travel operators in St. Lucia who are in possession of similar vessels and still have not received authorization. Alexander says as local operators continue to explore their options, protest action is under heavy consideration.
If this thing is not rectified, we in the boating sector, we are already planning a protest against this thing, because that will have to stop. We will have to protest against albatross. We will go on the ports or block albatross out there on the ocean, prevent them from coming to St. Lucia, because this is unfair. And the French embassy need to address that. Maritime need to address that. Our foreign affairs minister need to address that. The Ministry of Tourism need to address that. Something needs to be done, because we cannot be the ones suffering all the time. What, St. Lucians are nothing? Is that the message we're sending out, that the French people are more important than St. Lucians? There must be equilibrium, there must be balance. Allow at least a St. Lucian vessel to come up there and collect goods for people down here. A lot of St. Lucians out of work. Their family in Martinique want to send groceries for them. If you're not allowing us to bring up people, at least allow us to come and take some goods, groceries, etc., to bring down to St. Lucians here. Something need to give, something need to be done, because the boating sector is suffering. I'm suffering, my business is suffering, and I'm not alone. So if this is not addressed, some other action will be taken to stop albatross from coming into St. Lucia.
As indicated by Alexander, the situation came to a head after the vessel was given clearance to operate. Since then, he says authorities have become increasingly difficult to reach.
So why is it a French vessel is allowed to be eating bread, if so to speak, carrying people from St. Lucia to Martinique, whatever cargo, whatever it is they have, taking it as well with those passengers to Martinique, and St. Lucia with medical conditions, going for attention and so on, that French vessel is allowed to come into St. Lucia and take these people and bring them over to Martinique. And that is allowed, and that same French vessel will take people from Martinique, St. Lucians desirous of coming back home, take them from Martinique and come to St. Lucia, so they apply in both ways. So why can't it be that a St. Lucia vessel is allowed to bring people up, and that French vessel allowed to bring people down, so that way other boats, other vessels can eat bread as well?
In a previous interview, Minister for Tourism Dominic Fede conceded that more government support is needed for the maritime travel sector, but he also stated that the government must be careful not to spread its resources too thin.
We have not gotten to that phase yet. You see, what we want to do is focus on a few things now and then extend towards other things. Longer stays are certainly up for consideration now, as we look to try to open up our villas, our Airbnb apartments, and to allow a greater diversity of the product to come back.
The minister says as opportunities for long-term accommodation become available, the government will be more readily able to provide assistance to ferry operators. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, the health minister says schools need to reopen despite COVID-19 concerns. The Principals Association clarifies the new shift system that will be implemented once schools reopen. And the CSA investigates reports from its members that government departments are not in full compliance with COVID-19 protocols. Those stories and more coming up after the break.